Morning, everyone. My name is Satyam. Uh, I represent an organization called I2E1, which stands for Information to Everyone. We started around 5 years back as an incubation at IIT Delhi with a goal to make products that can solve for information asymmetry, right? And the first thing that we picked up was how do we solve for a cheaper, faster, hopefully free internet for people. So in next 15, 20 minutes, what I'm going to talk about um, is very much focused around what is and how PM WANI is helping us to realize, a million AP dream. Uh, we all know that, while individually components of Wi-Fi infrastructure has existed for really long, it has just not taken off. And uh, how does PM money change our perspective? What are we seeing in the initial stages? And some interesting insights from the ground that all of you might find interesting is what I'm going to present. If there are any questions, would be happy to answer them towards the end of it. So for those who do not know much about PM money, I'll quickly try to cover that also. But uh, moment we talk about this word of a million AP dream, it kind of is it looks very contradictory. India is 1.3 billion people, 217 million households, and interestingly, when we talk about access points, even 1 million looks like a dream, right? And uh, every time you talk to people, you say that okay, we want to set up 1 million hotspots in the country, it looks like a dream to the entire ecosystem. And why that? That's a very fundamental question. Now, interestingly, see, in 1892, there was a gentleman who invented Coca-Cola, right? Today, Coca-Cola serves 1.7 billion servings on a daily basis. Now, we have products out there which were invented 130 years back. They're serving billions of people on a daily basis, even though the world is changing, needs are changing, still it works, right? And the reason probably is because there's a business model that drives it. The challenge when we talk about the million access points in the country has been, where is the business model? Who is going to pay for it? How would it become sustainable? And that's where PM Money came with a slightly fresh approach to see, okay, let's look at the problems at an architecture level and not only from a technical perspective, because we do have enough technical expertise to create technical solutions. Right? But when you bring all of this together, how do you make a customer experience which is fairly seamless? How do you make sure that the various components of ecosystems come together and a business model starts to evolve? Now, therefore, when WANI comes, so what? Like, how does it fundamentally change business model? Is must be one of the question on people's mind. See, from people who are business owners, there are two things that WANI enables to do. Right, it opens up a sharing economy, and we've seen examples globally, businesses after businesses, that moment there is a possibility of a shared economy that opens up, it reduces cost and it catalyzes the opening up of market. So for those who do not know much about it, you might, what PM Money does is it allows any end user who has already taken an internet connection to share it with others and charge commercially for it, right? So that's what PM Money allows for. The second thing is it also allows for a new category of players called PDOAs, which are PDO aggregators. Now, they are nothing else but a new kind of aggregators between internet service providers and end consumers. So a platform economy comes into play with money. So while there are various components, and I'm sure most of you guys would have read about the technical specification, how it comes together, but if we have to look at it at an architecture level, PM Money is fundamentally enabling shared economy in an otherwise licensed ecosystem. And it is also enabling a platform economy which would allow for new kind of players to come in who would be pretty lean and thin, who would probably not be infra first players. And they are going to focus more on making the customer experience better, create new kind of product that customers are going and hence increase adoption. Everything else, the provision of an app which can seamlessly connect across various PDOAs, or the provision of access points that have to talk to central registry. For me, those are technical details. At a fundamental architecture level, two things: shared economy, platform economy. So we are actually witnessing a fundamental change where there is a possibility of an Uber of internet, or there is a possibility of an OYO or Airbnb of internet going ahead. Now, how does this translate into actual business models? And I'm going back to the base question, right? Where is the business model, and are we seeing certain things? I'll quickly play a very small video that we created after launching the first PDOA in the country. I hope this works.
तनुजा, मैं 9वीं कक्षा में पढ़ता हूँ। पहले मैं मोबाइल डाटा से अपनी ऑनलाइन क्लास करता जो कि काफी महंगा पड़ता था। अब मैं वाईफाई से ऑनलाइन पढ़ाई करता हूँ। 50 रुपए का कूपन लाता हूँ, जिससे मेरे पूरे महीने की पढ़ाई हो जाती है। नाम राहुल है और मैं जब से बात है कि कूपन देखने लगा हूँ, मेरे डेली के कूपन जाते हैं और ऊपर से मेरी दुकान से कस्टमर चले जाते हैं और मेरा नंबर भी लिमिटेड है फ्री वाईफाई में, इससे मुझे कोई दिक्कत नहीं है और ये चीज बहुत अच्छी है हम सबके लिए।
Yeah. So, this is the first PDOA in the country that was launched in Delhi in a locality called Kusupurpadi. And, when we look at the results, they continue to get better day by day. In this locality, we're seeing that users are now actually consuming more and more internet. And a lot of it has got precipitated by COVID because of, online classes, work from home, people getting new kind of habits. But within 2.5 months, we've seen 344% increase in the total data that is being consumed. Average data per user, and if you look at the March number, people are consuming as much as 2.5 GB internet on a daily basis, right? The time that they're spending is more than 2 hours. That's also increasing almost 50% from where we started, and more users, almost 10% addition to the user base, which is happening. Now, the interesting thing is that all of these users are paying for this internet and using it. This is not a free internet zone. And that's where, I'm going to share like 5 learnings that we have from the ground, where when under PM WANI, we are launching paid programs for small, at these locations, we are actually seeing a fairly interesting take-up and business models actually evolving for the first time, at least in our experience, where the user paid internet is picking up, right? So what is happening? One is, see, the whole model is a very Indian way of change. Public Wi-Fi has been a very Western construct, right? Where the fundamental problem that was being trying to solve was that people are connected while at home, but when they go to public places like a mall or a stadium or a museum or public parks, you want continuity of connectivity. So continuity of connectivity is what, as a business problem, that you are trying to solve. Whereas in India, the problem that one has tried to solve through public internet has been more of proliferation of internet and not necessarily continuity of connectivity, because people do not have connectivity to start with in the first place. Right? And that's where, while most of the conversations and deployments in the past have happened at public places, we started to see it from a different way. And we say, okay, let's not go to public places, let's go where public lives and see it in a very Indian context. Where do public live, right? So 73% of Delhi lives in unauthorized, regularized colonies. These are small homes which are in the narrow zones. A lot of people are actually living in shared kind of accommodation. And that's where, fundamentally the model has to be seen in a very different way. How does it differ? Instead of the deployment that we see in public places, we kind of see more of shared internet points where 4, 5, 6, or even 10 families are together taking internet from a shared internet point in their localities, right? And uh, and that's what fundamentally starts to change when people start to get high speed, good internet closer to their homes rather than expecting that they would walk all the way up to a public place and consume it over there. So in the larger scheme of things, when we see, where would consumption of internet happen? I mean, statistics show 80% of global internet consumption happens inside homes. The same is true for China as well. And that is where there's been a huge gap, which mobile internet can only solve up to an extent, and hence models have to be created which are more distributed. So one of the fundamental tenet of PM1 has been this PDO model, where you go to a small shop or maybe to even a resident who can then set up a hotspot and serve it to few families or few people around it. In that way, people are getting what they want and the model starts to actually build up. Yeah. So, uh, the second point, therefore, coming from it is that why are these people buying it? And what we realized was that it's not free Wi-Fi as a marketing that works, because a large amount of Indian population does not even understand what are the benefits of Wi-Fi. It's obvious to us that the benefits of Wi-Fi might be high speed, more stable network, and unlimited internet. But that's not true for, I would say 80 to 85% of India. Even those who are on 4G broadband, right? They've never consumed Wi-Fi. So as we did a lot of consumer research, we realized that the benefit has to come upfront, and the benefit when people want to consume is that they can get affordable and unlimited internet. For that, there is a huge demand. People are willing to pay. They're because of something very interesting, right? Their lives are changing as ours is. They also want entertainment. They are also doing their online classes. Uh, I just took a screenshot straight from Google. How much data does Zoom use in 1 hour? Right now, it can be anywhere between 550 MB to 1.6 GB. If you go and see, Netflix might actually use up to 3 GB of internet for an hour. Hotstar might use up to 1.5 GB of internet per hour. If you're trying to play games, latency is so high that you probably can't play a game like a PUBG or a Free Fire on mobile internet. Now, the communities, when we look at take away the top 10%, who has home internet, actually it's even less than that, right? But for a lot of other people, the daily quota of 1.5 GB is no more sufficient. You cannot have your online classes with your video on for 3 to 4 hours. You cannot watch an entire movie. You cannot watch an entire cricket match. You can't play games for long. You can't have tournaments amongst your friends. And that's where the appetite for affordable unlimited internet is very, very high. Models have to just go present themselves and people are willing to pay for it. And that's the learning that we have seen in the last 2 months with PM1 opening up the ecosystem in a slightly different way. And as that is happening, what is very interesting is we are actually finding a very, very new kind of buyers. In our experience of last 4 to 5 years providing Wi-Fi at public places, or we've never seen majority of the usage coming from kids and youths. Moment you take it in under the new model, closer to the communities, closer to where they stay, 85% of our usage is happening by kids and youth in the age of 8 to 18. And they are the ones who are actually now hooked on to internet. Their parents might be using internet for productivity, but these people are using internet not only for productivity, but for entertainment, to remain connected, for video calls, for making their TikTok videos and whatnot. So a very, very new kind of buyer. And therefore, when we think about our marketing, when we think about how do we reach out to them, it's a new hungry India. That's the TG that we are going after, who's going to get into adult productive lives in next 4 to 5 years. 85% of the entire internet is being consumed, purchased by these guys. And if you would have seen on the previous one, the tagline that we're using is "Sapno se zyada, sapno se tej internet." And people are kind of connecting with it because they do realize that internet is a gateway, it's a staircase to their dreams, and that realization in the younger population is much higher. So that's a very new insight, at least for us, that who is going to be the buyer of these services. And as we talk about the fundamental architecture of PM1E being that of a distributed model, who does a better distribution business than FMCG companies? And that's where we also do a lot of our inspiration from. So when it comes to the execution side, our inspiration, we say Maggie. I mean, setting up a hotspot, a manageable hotspot which is fully compliant, as per DOT guidelines, should be as easy as making Maggie noodles, right? And Maggie is almost like an icon amongst the entire India. Anyone who's been to college would have survived on Maggie because it's so simple, it's so easy, it happens quickly. So we also started looking at our solution and deployment as a Maggie solution. It has to be easy for somebody who has been to school only till grade 5 to set up a hotspot, to get it started, and to start uh, giving internet to people around him and charging for it. So unless the product is that much simplified, it just doesn't work. And we do uh, believe today that within 2 minutes it can be deployed without the help of any network engineers. Right? So in our entire operations team, we actually have we deliberately do not hire anyone who's a background in network engineering because we believe that that might come with a very different way and for a very different kind of solutions rather than what has to be built for PM money uh, PDO kind of deployments. And this, this is another going to that, as we think of how do we create business models and take inspiration from FMCG, we also realize, there was this fundamental question, whose business are we eating into? If people are buying from us, that because the end of the day, wallet is only that much. And interestingly, what is happening is we actually seems to be eating into, the 5 rupee, 10 rupees kurkure or lays. A small kid, and again, I'm going back to my primary TG is 8 to 18-year-old kid. They get pocket money anywhere between 5 rupees to 20 rupees. And 5 rupees in many cases is what they might actually end up getting on a daily basis or once in 2 days from their parents. Go and eat something. They would have gone and they would have bought a chips packet. Now what they're doing is they're actually going and buying a 5 rupee coupon, which gives them unlimited internet for 24 hours. And they're using it. Friends are coming together, they're buying this internet coupon and they're having a game tournament on over the net amongst themselves. So a lot of consumption, which was actually happening from the pocket money of these kids, is kind of shifting towards the consumption of internet. And interestingly, it's creating like a win-win proposition for the players and the internet service provider, the local ISP, who's he gets benefited because he's now able to sell his unsold inventory, which is getting converted into fixed additional income. This is opening up a new market for him because by himself he would have not been able to create a bite-sized economy of 5 rupees on a daily basis. Right? So by using a PDOA like us in the middle, he's able to create a bite-sized economy. It's a win-win for customer because they're able to have an affordable shampoo like sachet pricing close to their homes, where uh, many times inside their homes, where they're able to then carry out a lot of their internet needs. Surprisingly, a lot of them have smart TVs. We've been surprised by the number of smart TVs and requests to connect smart TV onto Wi-Fi has been coming. You would know that PDO model operates through a network of small hosts who then become an agent of selling coupons, so they get additional income. And for PDO is like it's a scalable business model with almost no infra requirement from our side, right? We kind of go work with the entire ecosystem together and are creating business model. So even though early days, the result that we have seen now with almost 4,000 such locations are very, very encouraging, not only in terms of the kind of usage that is happening, but also in terms of how it is actually leading to a more sustainable business model. Coming out of few of the things that I shared with you guys. So that's where I would probably pause and happy to take any questions that you people might have.
Thanks, Satyam. That was a very nice presentation. So I do request participants, if you have any questions, to send them on the Q&A panel. I have a few questions to start with. Maybe my co-host might also have.
Yeah.
So how easy or difficult, you mentioned about how you are making it easy for, let's say, some small shop owner to onboard this kind of a system. So are there technical requirements on the access points? Are there technical requirements on the backhaul? How does one ensure that there is some, they don't get fooled by somebody who is trying to sell them something, etc. So can you add some based on all the real life experience?
Sure. So, see, two parts of the question. One is about the technical requirement. Yes, there are certain technical requirement on the access point part, because it has to talk to the central registry for this model to really work. No technical requirement as such on the backhaul, because as long as there is internet connectivity, access point should be able to talk to both its AAA as well as to the central server. On the second part of people being fleeced with false promises, so far we have not seen in our experience. And added to that is also the fact that there is no market as such which is known to small merchants, right? Where they would actually go deploy access points at their cost and invest in it, right? Uh, and especially right now when COVID has really hit them hard, they're not willing to invest from their pockets. Therefore, the solution that we had to make had to be very, very affordable, which we can, almost convert into like an EMI, right? So, for example, today we are able to break it down into 50 rupees per month kind of rental, and that makes it fairly affordable for them. So yes, the technological innovation has to be to make it very, very affordable and scalable. It has to be compliant with everything that has been prescribed under the new WANI framework. And three, on the other side, unless somebody goes with an entire model and drives that model, we haven't seen many examples from where the request is coming from, any small merchant or anyone else to say that I'm going to invest on my own, create my own market and make this small. Yeah, so that's.
Sure. Thank you. So I have 4 questions here. So let me start with that. So first question comes from Vijay. This model must be using infrastructure laid out by some big companies. Is the government incentivizing it? How are you checking the cost? Maybe I'll just add one more. You mentioned about some authentication where government gets involved. Maybe you can also maybe add that to that question list from Vijay.
Sure. So, see, in the PM WANI framework, as some of you guys would know, there is a provision for a WANI app where the user can go and register himself using his phone number. This phone number has to be verified using the OTP. When a request is made to an access point, it comes with a pre-authenticated token, and the user is allowed an entry if he's already a registered user. In any case, user is actually being checked and verified for the authentication using the phone number and an OTP method, which has been there for quite some time. Now, for this part of the system to work, like I said, PDOAs or even a PDO can have an access point that is directly talking to the central registry, and the entire architecture works without the need for the backhaul player to come into play. Right? So the backhaul can be from any player. Now, to answer your second question, it's not necessarily that every time it is a large player. In fact, in many of the localities that we are working, large players do not serve these localities for 2 primary purposes. One, in fact, 3 purposes, right? One, they might not have a right of way to take their feed over here. most of this is actually happening over broadband and not over a leased internet line. The second is there are local operators who typically are competition and they don't allow larger players to come in. Right? And third is it is not a viable market. Therefore, no large player wants to invest and take a fiber all the way up to such communities. These communities are typically served by local ISPs or in many cases local cable operators. The incentive for them is that every new hotspot is a new internet connection for them. And that is opening up new market and hence new opportunities for them. To answer the last point that you asked, is there an incentive from the government? At this point of time, the PM WANI architecture has been thought of a fundamental architectural change, and it's not a project or a scheme. Now, it may so happen that government or governments might come up with various kind of schemes to incentivize, and one that you know of is, the Delhi Municipal Corporation has just come up with a scheme. But at a central level, it's a fundamental architectural shift. In the past, it was a license regime. Only if you are an ISP, you were allowed to have a network and sell that network. It is almost like if you want to be a cab provider, Maruti can be the only company that can manufacture, have cars on the road, and appoint drivers and can have a cab fleet. Right? So what PM WANI does it unbundles it. Right? It says, okay, and again, going back to my car analogy, manufacturers will manufacture the car, somebody else can be a driver, and a third person can go and get consumers. Similarly, in PM WANI now, an internet service provider can just focus on providing world-class infra. They can actually be increasing their business by providing more number of points to someone else. There can be a new class of players, or maybe the end user itself, who can then share this internet connection with people around them. This reduces operational cost. This increases competitive advantage of specialized players, and this typically opens up. And that is how it has been envisaged.
Thank you. I think in the interest of time, maybe I'll just have I'll club a few questions. Maybe if you could give some quick comments. What about, is this infra useful for offloading or roaming? What about mobile hotspots being used? Can you quickly comment on these things?
Yes. So, see, all of these possibilities exist. And, like I said right upfront, technologically, and, I'm sure most of the audience here are experts in Wi-Fi infrastructure. Technologically, enabling it is not as much of a challenge. The bigger challenge has been how do you create an architecture that incentivizes business models that can sustain on themselves. So all the things that you talked about are possible.
Okay, thank you. And I think some requests for articles on some of the usage, I think offline, maybe I'll forward Joy Kuri's request for any other information. And there are also a couple of questions about security, privacy, etc. Is there anything, I would say this would be the last question. Would you like to add how everything is locked up so that people don't feel compromised, etc.?
Yeah. So, see, it's not that PM WANI is not an unregulated architecture. It's a regulated architecture where, like any other Wi-Fi infrastructure, there are very specific roles and responsibilities for the people, both in terms of data privacy as well as security. It is just creating a new class of players which do not have to pay licensing fee. It is just unbundling the ecosystem. It is not taking regulation away from when it comes to the fundamentals of data privacy or security. So those things are being taken care of. You can go to PM WANI website and get more details about how that happens.